My name is Anne Marie Mitchell, and I'm Associate Professor in the Communication and Media Innovation Department here at Columbia College Chicago. You know, I was just reflecting on this because as somebody who was a woman working in the 90s, it was, really still a time when we were getting started, women in the public relations world. And I learned from women who were working and breaking down boundaries at that time. And one of them was Brenda Barnes. She was PepsiCo North America's president. And she left this huge job to go take care of her children. And no one ever did that. No one ever jumped from the career track to the mommy path. And then if they did that, it was kind of understood that their career would be over. So she did that, and that's what kind of inspired me to be somebody who was going to figure out how to work and raise my kids. I thought, you know what, if she's going to make this choice for her personal, life, I'm going to do the same thing. So I actually, after my first child, I ended up going back to work for ComEd on a part-time basis, 4 days a week. I said, I'm not going to work on Fridays. I'm going to take care of my son. And it was really, not something a lot of people were doing at the time. So I never worked full-time again after that. I always negotiated a flexible arrangement where I could work 4 days or, 1 day from home, sometimes 3 days. And so I think that in that way, trying to figure out as a woman in the work world, how do you balance a desire to have children, which I'd always wanted to do, and also have a career, was challenging. I could never have predicted it. I remember being this little, pipsqueak in this huge public and government affairs organization for Amoco. And at the time, there were more than 300 of us working around the globe. And I was working as a speechwriter. And I remember working with these high-powered men who had been speechwriters. I was the first woman that they hired as a speechwriter. And they were the old boys club. They were, hard drinking guys. And, it was really hard to break in. And that was a lot of what it was like when I was first getting started, a lot of, the old boys network. And, to think that I would start at that level and then eventually become the vice president of global communications for Sara Lee Corporation, which had more than 150,000 employees at the time when I first started. That was a very, huge operation, $1.5 million budget. I was able to hire people. I was working at the senior levels. So no, I probably would never have realized that I would have been able to, rise to that level. I guess I've been always a little bit fearless, and I think part of it is you don't know what you don't know. And I also have a master's in Spanish literature, and I think learning Spanish, learning another language, is a great way to understand how to ask questions and how to know, what I can recover from anything. If I don't know something, I'm just going to figure it out and I'm going to learn it. And I think that's also just part of how I grew up. So I've always been a little bit fearless, not afraid to make mistakes, and not, I've never really thought of myself as someone who can't be in any kind of conversation with anybody, whether it's a CEO or a frontline employee. So, and I think it was too, even in my time at Amoco, there was an opportunity to work on a very big project, a transformation initiative for the whole corporation. And it was something new and no one else really wanted to do it. And I said, well, I'll do it. So I raised my hand for something that ended up being one of the most transformative moments in my career, because that was about leading culture change for Amoco. And people thought that was a soft thing and, that'll go away. But actually, culture change has been a huge part of my career, and it was really the beginning of organizations saying, we've got to fix this culture. And that really started in the early 90s. So I think just realizing that, no matter what, raise your hand, get involved, and ask lots of questions. So. Yeah, for sure. I can think about when I was with Golan Harris. Oh, it was Golan Harris at the time, now it's Golan. That was my second global agency job, and I was hired as I think I was hired as a VP. It was a very senior job. and I didn't have a lot of skills in presentation development, and that was hugely important to the job. So I was starting to feel like, gosh, I don't know if I know how to do this. And I was also thrown into a lot of assessment and survey work, and I needed to find the right resources to help me do the work. So I think, yeah, there were times when I said, gosh, I don't really know if I have these skills. This industry is changing. I mean, that's the one thing about public relations and most communications field. They've always been completely transforming themselves. You know, there's always been new technologies, new programs, new ways of doing things, and you have to be so adaptable. And sometimes you feel like, oh, I don't know if I'm really as current as I need to be. So you either learn those skills or you hire the people to work with you who have those skills. But I think, yeah, it's kind of a constant feeling like, am I as current as I need to be? So it's a little bit of, you know, it keeps you on your toes, I guess. Probably my work with Brenda Barnes, and I just wrote about this on LinkedIn. So if you want to check out this article on LinkedIn that I just wrote. But Brenda Barnes, I mentioned before what a profound inspiration she was for me when she left PepsiCo. Well, little did I know that 10 years later she would be my boss at Sara Lee Corporation. She became the CEO, and I was running employee communications. So I had the privilege of working with her for almost 3 years. And I think when we were going through this transformation at Sara Lee, and we were shedding businesses, we were asking people to move, we were laying people off, profoundly impacting thousands of people's lives every day, and there was so much uncertainty. I said to Brenda, you know, let's at our milestone, our 1-year milestone, let's have a moment where we thank everybody for what they've done, and let's pay it forward. You know, let's record you in all the languages that we speak, which were like 6. There were like 6 corporate languages. So she spoke in English and we dubbed it in all the different languages. And then that milestone, the 1-year anniversary day, we launched her video, and all of her leadership team, they also sent email messages and thank you letters to their direct reports, and it was a complete thank you cascade. And it really taught me a CEO can be very human and can really respect and appreciate everything they're asking of their employees, and her ability to realize how important that was to take the time and be sincere and not just look at people as numbers but look at them as humans. That really impacted me, and I wrote about it because actually Brenda died just 3 weeks ago, suddenly, very young. It was very shocking. She'd had a stroke and then she died of a second stroke. And I actually learned about it the day of the Women's March in Chicago, and I was marching with my daughter. So when I came home that night, I wrote my first article for LinkedIn. I'd been wanting to write something for LinkedIn, and that was what I realized was my moment. And I've gotten, you know, a lot of replies, a lot of comments on how many people were moved by Brenda. And in fact, a couple people commented about that day at Sara Lee. Some folks who were in Europe remembered that day when, and I didn't know that. I'm in Chicago, and here's somebody who was actually in Belgium, remembered at the coffee and tea plant that day that Brenda's message was cascaded to Belgium, and she said that day was such a positive day for all of us, and it was, and I remember that, and you know, thank you, and that had such a big impact on me. So yeah, I think it's just so important to remember we're humans and find those opportunities as communicators to do the right thing and bring those messages to life. Have a great resume that you are constantly updating. Get started on your portfolio as early as you can. Everything you do in a classroom, try to get to the ultimate point where it can be included in a portfolio. Have informational interviews with people. Don't always be wondering what's in it for me. Sometimes go out and get together with somebody you just admire and say, can I take you for coffee? I really am genuinely just interested in learning about your career. So be curious, be interested in what other people have done. And I think be a risk taker. You know, try everything. I sometimes find a lot of students say, oh, I want to go into sports, and that's it. They're just looking for a sports opportunity. But little do you know, you might go working for an agency that has a sports division, or maybe you could be the first one to bring it there, right? So I guess it's just take risks and create your own path.